3 years ago today, Smashified was born, and it's hard to believe that it's been that long, but I figured given the occasion, now seemed like a good time for me to make an update video to give you guys an idea of what's been going on with the channel, since obviously it's been well over half a year since we've actually posted any content on the channel. So fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a lot to go over, but I'm going to try to power through it as quickly as possible. So you might be wondering, why the hiatus? Well, I briefly touched on this in a community post in the community tab on our channel, which is something that YouTube lets us do now. And the short version is that life happened. Life got in the way. The long version is that it was sort of a culmination of a lot of different factors. Perhaps the biggest reason was simply that we had stretched ourselves too thin. We were trying to juggle creating Smashified episodes while also doing client work, and also trying to develop new series for the channel. And on top of that, many of us, if not all of us, were trying to also pursue some of our personal long-term goals, which don't necessarily coincide with creating Smashified content for the channel. But before I can really dive deeper into the details of why we went silent, I sort of have to give a history of where we came from, or at least how Smashified began. As you probably all know, Smashified was jump-started by the infamous Rayman leak, and the leak was carefully formulated to reach as many people as possible, while also demonstrating my ability as an artist to faithfully replicate the style of the Smash 4 character renders. Needless to say, the plan definitely worked and was actually a bit more effective than I really intended it to be. On the first day after the reveal, the channel grew from a sub count of something in the double digits. I think I mentioned 80 or something like that in a video that I had posted before the leak. And the day after, the channel had shot up to over 20,000 subscribers. So it was very, very effective and very crazy. It was a weird time for me. But in the months that followed, I recruited a co-lead, who was of course Chris Sheshel, and then a team of artists and musicians to create more content for the Smashified channel. I guess back then, it wasn't actually the Smashified channel, it was just Artsy Omni. Later, we renamed it to Smashified because the Smashified series was really all that was happening for a while. Now, one could easily assume that my broader goal was to start a YouTube career, and so moving forward with Smashified at such a rapid pace must have been an ideal outcome. But it's actually a little bit more complicated than that, and to understand why, we have to go back to before the Rayman leak, and I'm talking like way back. Before college, I spent a lot of time on gaming forums, and I focused a lot on making fan art, which is where I sort of got my start as an illustrator. I started by making Sonic pixel art or sprites as a young teenager, and by 2008, I was doing a lot of illustration in Photoshop. And in fact, if you look back at my old DeviantArt page, you might be able to see sort of a progression of the kinds of projects that I was working on over the years. Now, some of you might be familiar with my old Kirby hat project, which is something that I started under the name HexDouble, which is one of the many aliases I've gone by over the years, and that was on Nintendo's official Insider forums, and then subsequently Insider 2 when that was discontinued. And so the Kirby hats were really my sort of first foray into making Smash-related pseudo 3D renderings, and then that led to some Brawl-style 3D renderings, or again, fake 3D renderings. Then in 2009, I went to college to study graphic design. Now, it was during my freshman year that I was recruited by a group of passionate gamers who were interested in creating their own video game. Now, before college, the idea of working on video games as a career was barely even a pipe dream. It wasn't really on my radar. So this was a really exciting opportunity for me. So we formed an indie development studio of about 12 people, and we started on our first game project. Now, long story short, we ended up canceling that first project because the scope of the project was just too large, and we didn't really know how to handle it. We couldn't really manage that project. So then we pivoted to a new project with a slightly smaller team. We sort of just pruned the team down a bit, and this new project actually saw release on the iOS App Store in 2012. Now, the game got mixed reviews, and after it was released, the team actually disbanded because a lot of people were starting to graduate from college, and not everybody on the team had the aspirations to be full-time game developers. Now, in case you're wondering, no, you cannot find that game on the App Store right now. It was pulled from the App Store years ago because without a team, we couldn't obviously support the game for a new version of iOS. I, however, had decided that after I graduate from college, I wanted to be an indie game developer. So I partnered with one of the other former team members, Phil Ogden, who was also a fellow graphic design major, and the two of us started working on a project of our own in our final semester. On top of that, Phil and I had the bright idea of trying to create our own Let's Play channel. And at the time, we were watching a lot of other LPers and YouTubers like Chugga Conroy, Nintendo Capri Sun, Rhett and Link, just to name a few. And needless to say...
Oh, yes. Dang it. Do it, man. Chubby Bunny.
That channel didn't really take off, and after we both graduated from college, we just stopped making videos altogether, but my interest in creating YouTube content didn't really go away. Now, without going into too much detail, we ended up putting our initial game project on hold due to various reasons that I'm not going to go into, and by late 2013 or early 2014, we started working on a second game idea. Now, the problem is, we were starting to get a bit burnt out and also a little bit distracted. Phil had started dating a girl who is now his wife, and I had recently purchased a new tablet display, which is of course my Unova MVP22U, which is still what I use to this day. So I was anxious to jump back into illustration. Now at this point in time, it had been a while since I had really done any sort of fan art illustrations of any kind. In college, I was kept busy by school, and then fan art wasn't really on my radar. So now that I had this new tablet, I was trying to think of what kinds of projects I could work on. Of course, it was around this time that the hype for Smash 4 was reaching its peak. So in the days leading up to E3 2014, I had decided to make my first attempt at a fake leak, which of course was Klonoa. After all, I had a history of trying to replicate the style of Brawl back in the day, so I just wanted to see if I had improved enough to actually pull something like this off. Now, obviously it didn't really make much of a splash because I made some really silly mistakes, but it was a fun experiment, and then by December of 2014, Smash 4 had already released, and we were all in the midst of the hype surrounding the Smash ballot, and of course the potential for DLC. Now at this point I had started to contemplate my current circumstances, I guess, for lack of a better word. Phil and I had been working on our game project for months on end, and in the meantime, the itch to create more YouTube content was starting to sort of flare back up, which is sort of a weird metaphor, but it occurred to me that even if Phil and I were to finish our game, there was really no guarantee that anybody would play it, let alone know about it at all, because neither of us really had any sort of following to speak of. So there was a very real possibility that when we finished our game, we would just release it out to the world and it would just sort of die a quiet death. Which is sort of a morbid notion, I understand, but you know, that's just the reality of it. Around this time, I had started seeing other attempts at fake leaks. And one specific fake leak that I saw was being covered by Etika, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Now, this leak wasn't even very well made, and yet it was still getting coverage by people on YouTube. And so I figured, you know, I bet I could make a fake leak that's more convincing than this one, and I bet I could get people like Etika to talk about it. And the rest is history. Once Smashified started gaining momentum, I started dedicating more and more time to it, until eventually, Phil and I had stopped working on game development altogether, and then the next 2 years were really just about making content for YouTube. And so I had unwittingly become a YouTuber. Which brings us back to 2017. In January of last year, Phil and I had decided that it was time to renew our pursuit of game development. And so for the past 12 months, we've actually been working on our first project that we started and shelved back in 2014. As you can imagine, it's quite a time commitment even though we only work on the project 2 nights per week, but that's part of why the output started to wane a bit at the beginning of 2017, and by around July, it has started to become a real struggle to continue making content for the channel. The hype surrounding Super Smash Bros. Isn't exactly what it used to be, and for many people on the team, the passion had just sort of shifted, which is probably pretty evident. Which is why we were trying to come up with ways to switch up our content. We even announced Zeldafied on Twitter with hopes that that could be like a welcome change of pace for us, but obviously that didn't pan out. After SmashCon in August, I was just exhausted. I couldn't find it in me to work on Smashified. And not only that, but my job situation had sort of shifted as well, so month after month would pass, and it just became harder and harder to pick it back up. And now here we are. Now, I don't want to just talk about me all day. If you've been following Chris on Twitter, then you might have seen that he's been doing a lot of freelance illustration and commission work, And he's also been doing a lot of art streams on his Twitch channel. He also has his own Patreon where he's been putting out a lot of really fantastic work. He's been doing a lot of Splatoon 2 related artwork. He's really mastered the style. He's been doing it for months and months. And he's also got his own Discord server where we've been having a lot of fun playing games and enjoying Splatoon 2 especially. Chris has been really into Splatoon 2, I gotta say. You might have also seen that he had a few daily designs on theyeti.com, so if you're into Smashified, consider checking out his Twitch and his Patreon. All that to say, we haven't been sitting around doing nothing. However, I wanted to breathe some new life into this channel. But with our lives being so different now compared to when we first started, it's become clear to us that we can't just do things the way we did in 2015. So, we're going to be making some changes. In the next few weeks, we're going to be introducing a new venture on the channel, which is going to explore new facets of the gaming industry and also accommodate our emerging interests as creative people. And particularly that's going to involve things like game development and art streams. So you might be wondering, what about things like Smashified? And the honest truth is that Smashified was never going to last forever. It really couldn't. The Nintendo community is constantly changing, our lives are changing, and so the channel just sort of has to change with it. But we do have a few things in the Smashified pipeline that we're going to be completing in the coming weeks. And we're not really formally declaring an end to the Smashified series, so we might be making more episodes down the line, especially if Nintendo announces a new Smash for Switch, but it'll be part of a more diverse offering of content. And so we're going to be shifting our focus, and we're going to use that same passion that we have for Smashified to fuel new projects. In fact, for the past couple months or so, we've been working on a big project that we're really excited to share really soon. Now, if this shift away from Smashified being the core focus of the channel means that you're no longer interested in being a subscriber, I totally understand. I mean, it's been a really wild ride, and I'm grateful that all of you have supported us for the past 3 years, and I wish all of you the best. But as we look to the future, I hope many of you stick around because 2018 is going to be a really big adventure for not just the channel, but for my own personal pursuits as a game developer. So I hope to share more about that on my personal channel and on Twitter, maybe even here, I don't really know. So stay tuned, we're going to be revealing this new direction in an upcoming video that I've been working on for the past few weeks, so I hope you guys come along for the ride. I think it's going to be a blast. So until then, guys, how do you end videos? I haven't done this in so long.